There's a great line from the movie Thelma and Louise where Gina Davis is telling Susan Sarandon how she's been able to cope with her very unhappy and frustrating life. And Susan Sarandon looks at her and says, "Well, you get what you settle for. You get what you settle for." Moses was upset with the Israelites because they were settling for false gods. Jesus was upset with the people of his day because they were settling for foundations built on sand. Moses tells the people there's a much greater God. Don't settle for the phony ones. And Jesus tells the people that if you settle for sand, your foundation will collapse. So I wonder, we might want to reflect on the false gods that we settle for these days, or the kinds of foundations we are building for ourselves, sand or rock. But let me suggest three false gods that seem to be overtaken by our culture. The three are, the first one, greed is good, and the second one, it's all about me, and the third, I want it now. These seem to be the gods that have overtaken our awareness, and by accepting these gods, we forget that we are an interdependent people in need of relationships, and that an important part of the foundation of our lives is the depth of our communities and the strengths of our relationships. So when it's all about my greedy self wanting what I want now, that's a foundation built on sand. After President Obama spoke in Tucson, David Brooks wrote a very interesting article in the New York Times that's entitled "Tree of Failure." It's all about civility. And Brooks tells us that civility is a tree with deep roots. And the roots are these: failure, sin, weakness, and ignorance. He tells us how fragmentary truth is, how complicated the world is, much more complicated than any human intelligence can really understand. And he tells us that individually we all make many mistakes, that we need each other to struggle to find the truth and to find some answers that will benefit all of us. But he points out in the last 40 years, we've stopped reminding ourselves of our limitations. And now we simply tell ourselves how wonderful we are. And we believe that we have all truth. Modesty does not exist anymore. It's all monologue, no dialogue. It's a great article. I think he leaves one important piece out. And that piece is that in some ways we've made ourselves God, and we've forgotten the one true God. There's a comedian by the name of Louis C.K., and in an interview with Conan O'Brien about the economic crisis, he noted this. He said, "It might be a good thing if we could all go back to the Stone Age for a while." Now, why would he say that? Well, he said it because he said everything is amazing today and nobody's happy. Well, we can't be happy if we don't know our place in life and we believe that we have more knowledge and power and truth than we really have. And we can't be happy if we think we are God. Just look around us at the mess we've made. Everything is amazing today. But we have to be careful because everything is changing so quickly and coming at us so fast that we can so easily be caught off guard, as we were with the economic crisis. Gordon Gekko from Wall Street told us that greed was good. He said it is all about me and my wants. And he said we can have it now, all that we want. And many people built foundations on that, and those were the false gods that failed us. Nietzsche gives a great parable in one of his books. There's a madman who lights a lantern in bright daylight. He rushes into the crowded marketplace, and he's shouting, "I seek God, I seek God." But the people in the marketplace, they ridicule him and they laugh at him. They say, "Well, has God got lost? Did God lose his way like a child? Is God hiding? Is God afraid of us?" The people keep yelling at him and laughing at him. So the madman turns and shouts, "God is dead, I tell you. We have killed him, you and I. All of us are murderers. What was the holiest and mightiest of all that the world has yet owned has bled to death under our knives." Well, then the madman goes silent. He smashes his lantern on the ground and he announces, "I've come too early. This deed is still too distant for the people to see, and yet they have done this to themselves. They have killed God." Now, what Nietzsche is suggesting is that unbelief and atheism is at first a phenomenon among those of us who call ourselves believers. It's not so much that God is denied, but that God is absent from ordinary consciousness and the lives of believers. It's not so much that God is dead, but that we think way too much of ourselves and we've forgotten God. In many ways, we have settled for the amazing all around us. But when we settle for the amazing, have we lost our sense of dependence upon God and interdependence upon one another? Have we stopped being aware of our limitations and our need for each other to find the truth, with the realization that none of us have all the truth? C.S. Lewis, in a sermon that he gave one time entitled "The Weight of Glory," he tells us that our God finds our desires not too strong, but way too weak. He tells us that we are half-hearted creatures fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered to us. And he ends his sermon saying to each of us, "We are far too easily pleased." Now, according to a recent study in 2011 that was reported in the USA Today, the title of the article was, "Sex, Booze, or Money Just Can't Compare with the Jolt of Self-Esteem." The author, the researcher's name was Brad Bushman. And what he did was he looked at all the things that college students love, and they love self-esteem more than anything. What the researchers did is they used two separate studies of over 250 students from Ohio and New York, and they measured the students' desire for a number of different goals, some of which were receiving praise, engaging in sex, drinking alcohol, getting a paycheck, eating their favorite food, or seeing their best friend. The results pointed to one clear desire. University students wanted experiences that would help boost their self-esteem, such as receiving a compliment or getting a good grade. The article in the USA Today also quoted a sociologist by the name of Bob Corsaro, who has worked for 35 years with college students. He said this, he said, more and more kids are being raised with high expectations, and it creates a sense of entitlement. And so the original researcher, speaking on this excessive need to be praised, said this. He said, in general, I think self-esteem, though it feels good for the individual, is harmful to society, especially if it goes over the top and becomes narcissism. Well, this past week, we've been inundated with the narcissism of Charlie Sheen. And there's one statement among many, many that just sums it all up. When he was talking about AA and what the philosophy of AA is, don't be special, be one of us. And Charlie responds, newsflash to all of you very unspecial people, I am special. That is kind of the height of narcissism. Seems like, in many ways, we've gone over the top. And we've settled for the amazing. And as Susan Sarandon said, we get what we settle for. We can be too easily pleased by that which does not give us a solid foundation. So maybe the comedian was right. Maybe going back to the Stone Age for a time wouldn't be a bad idea. Perhaps we would begin to understand our limitations and find the true God once again.